Thank you for joining me, everyone. Today, we're going to go over putting on waterproofing, specifically Schluter brand KERDI-BOARD. This is a really great lightweight foam board that you can put up on your walls and then put tile over it. And it has an orange layer on it that waterproofs it. This is the first time I've used KERDI-BOARD. I always just did a waterproofing membrane over cement board before. One of the first things I noticed is how easy this stuff is to cut, how lightweight it is. It's just all around really great to work with in terms of manipulating it. I'm going to start with the front wall that has the shower valves on it, and then also do the back wall, which doesn't have anything on it. These two walls have wood studs, so they're going to be a lot easier to drill and screw into and set the boards on. Once those are done, we'll have to deal with the all brick, all stone window wall. When you're attaching these two wood frames, make sure that your studs are no more than 16 inches on center. You honestly probably won't think about it, except for the fact that on my valve wall, the wall on the right side, I had to add another stud because where the valve was, it ended up making the studs more than 16 inches on center. It's something that I didn't realize and ended up causing me a little bit of trouble. I used a process called wet shimming, which is something that Schluter actually recommends if you have studs that are out of plane and out of plumb with each other, which is what I have. So I just slather on, basically, you apply a bunch of thin set mortar onto the studs, then push the KERDI-BOARD onto it. And you can adjust it, make sure that it's nice and plumb, and put some screws in, but don't put the screws all the way in. Just put them in enough to hold it. Let the thin set dry, typically a few hours overnight just to be safe. You can screw all the screws in the rest of the way once it's dried. The purpose of the thin set here is just to act as kind of a placeholder. The difficult part of this job is the masonry, the stone around the glass block window, because there's no wood studs there. So there's no way for me to screw in and make a strong mechanical connection. So I knew that I would have to rely on thin set and cement adhesive. The KERDI band needs to sit 2.5 inches on the KERDI-BOARD itself, the orange thing. And it also needs to sit 2.5 inches on this next, this part that I've been talking about here. And so 2.5 inches here, and then 2.5 inches here. Then there needs to be another 2.5 inches here, and then 2.5 inches on this side. So what I'm going to do is build this outward until I get to 5 inches. So that way I can have the KERDI band here on 2.5 inches, then have 2.5 inches here, then with no overlap, have another 2.5 inches here, and then have the final 2.5 inches right here. So if I build this out, if I build this right here out 5 inches, then I can put the KERDI band on with no overlap whatsoever. And here's a photo for reference from the end of the project. You can see the KERDI band is covering the seams, making everything waterproof and very little overlap. I attached KERDI boards framed around the window because the window shelf, the two vertical sides, and then the top of the window weren't perfectly straight. They would need to be perfectly level or plumb in order to do the tile on it. I put a board on each of those, made sure that each of these boards were perfectly plumb, level, and squared. I attached them using modified thin set. KERDI recommends using their specific thin set, but in this case, I'm using it behind the KERDI-BOARD to attach it to good old-fashioned stone and masonry and mortar. I wanted modified thin set because it's pretty strong. On the face of the KERDI, you should use, and I did use, Schluter's specific all set, thin set mortar. All right, I sandwiched these 2 inches, so it's 4 layers deep at a 1/2 inch per layer. And these are drying, so I have 1 for each side of the window. And once they're a little more dry, I'm going to put 1 right there and 1 right there, and hopefully then bring out the wall a little bit further. I built it out to 5.5 inches on each of the 2 columns framing the window. It was important here to keep everything in one plane around the window. The sides of the window, above the window, and below it all had to stay in the same straight up and down plumb plane. Okay, so it's plumb down there, but then as we go up here, in order to get it plumb, you have a big gap. And that's about 1 inch, that gap. I've already measured it. So that means that this, in order to be flush with everything, the pillars on the side and the top part, this top part would have to come out about 1 inch, which is going to be a lot of KERDI board, cause a lot of problems with alignment and everything, and also cut out some of the tub deck area. It's right on the edge there. You can't see it. It's covered. So instead of bringing this out, the other option is grinding this all down. And this was added on later. This is mortar. So if you have the right tool, which in this case would be a rotary hammer, or kind of like a handheld jack, if you have the right tool, I should be able to do this. Just get it all off. So I had to get to work jackhammering down the mortar that was built up underneath the window so that it would be in the same plane as the areas above the window. And here I go. It wasn't that bad. It was a little messy. I had a shop vac going, and of course I wore protection for my eyes, my ears, and my lungs. I'm using the modified thin set to attach it directly to that stone wall. I kept the sheet in one big piece just because if I had made the cuts ahead of time for the window, it would make kind of a C shape and it would flop and move around and would be much harder to keep in one solid plane. I'm going to put 2 pieces of KERDI up here, attach them with the modified thin set to the wall, and once it's dried and set, I'll cut out the window with a oscillating multi-tool. This is the back of the KERDI board. I marked where I wanted to put the thin set, the areas where there would be stone wall. I also marked where not to set the thin set because that's the area that I would be cutting out for the window. I applied the thin set in big globs to the back of the KERDI board. This is what's called spot bonding. This is a technique that Schluter recommends in this case. And I just put those globs on and pressed that KERDI board right onto the wall, made sure it was nice and plumb, and then just left it there, let it sit overnight. The final step, cutting out a window space and showing the window. You can see this is the initial rough cut. I cleaned it up around the edges, but it all turned out great. It feels really solid. It follows all of the Schluter KERDI board installation recommendations. So I'm still going to get that lifetime warranty that Schluter has. That is it for today. Thank you everyone very much for joining me. Please like and subscribe if this video has been of any value to you. Or if you have any questions or anything that you think I should have done differently, please let me know. I'm always happy to learn new things. I am a DIYer, and I'm just doing this partly to learn, also to teach. Thank you very much.